Hey, what's up everybody? This is Damron with Trash Ass Gamers, and we're bringing you another Elder Scrolls Online Veteran Dungeon Guide. This is for Depths of Malatar, which is part of the Wrathstone DLC that just came out on March 12th. If you haven't seen any of our guides before, we will fast forward through the ads. This will be a complete dungeon playthrough, so you'll see every part of the dungeon, but we'll fast forward through the ads and we'll focus mainly on boss mechanics. Always want to give a shout out to say thank you to everybody who supported us thus far. We're a relatively new channel. We've had a lot of enjoyment making these guides, bringing these guides to you, as well as all the feedback that we've gotten from players. So it's been a really great experience. So also another thing that we'll do throughout the dungeon is we'll talk a little bit about the lore of the dungeon, kind of in between the bosses that we face. We'll kind of throw those tidbits in there. It's kind of interesting because the two dungeons in this particular DLC, Wrathstone, the lore is actually related, and we'll progress through those. And this dungeon is the first part of that lore. So we'll go ahead and blast through the first set of ads, and we'll meet at the first boss. Alright, which is right here, which is the Scavenging Maw. This is a pretty simple fight. It's not too difficult. Actually, this entire dungeon is not really too difficult considering it's a DLC dungeon. But the Scavenging Maw is not really too bad. The only thing you need to worry about are the conical kind of spray poison attack that he does, which you can see right here. Basically, the tank wants to really hold on to that. And at the end of that spray, he generates a pretty large AoE of poison around him that you don't want to stand in, even if you're the tank. As soon as he finishes the conical attack, just sidestep away from that, and now you can avoid that AoE as well. And then after you do a period of damage, he's going to disappear, and you're going to kind of enter a phase in which you really all need to stay together, and you have to find him. And when you get close to him, and when he's in his invisible form, he'll reappear and basically, attack a player and have to be interrupted. If you don't interrupt him, he'll actually kill that player in a matter of seconds. That's why when you enter that phase, you want to stick together. If you're spread out and someone that's spread out gets that initial aggro when he's, awaiting and lurking, so to speak, which you see on the screen there, they'll kill that player before anyone else can get there. So stay together as you're searching for him. And when you're in this phase, you're going to have these ads spawning, but you don't need to focus too much on them. They don't really do that much damage. Just let them kind of follow you as you're looking for the Scavenging Maw. And also you're going to have these AoE spawning at your feet, which shoot poison up into the air. Those are easily avoidable. You're going to see one right there. Again, set your AoE indicator to bright pink if you haven't already done so. So we're sticking together. We're looking for him. This is actually a pretty unique fight, right? I mean, I think it's kind of interesting. It's a little suspenseful at times. You're kind of looking through the dark, looking for this guy, and then you find him and you're like, oh, God, there he is, right? So there you go. He has to be interrupted or whoever finds him is going to die. So that's mainly it. There's not really too much else to this fight. So let's clean him up and we'll get moving on. And also that tech, I forgot to mention, you see that when you're fighting him, he will generate an AoE around all players. Don't overlap that damage. That's what's going to cause problems in that scenario. Soft stack, make sure everybody's circles are not overlapping, and then just block, and you'll easily survive that. Alright, so not too bad of a fight there. And as we're progressing to the next boss, let's talk a little bit about the lore of this dungeon, which is pretty interesting. So we're going to find a scholar and explorer from Valenfell named Thoraya, and at the entrance of this Imperial ruin, and she's in possession of a Dwemer tunnel gem that she retrieved from the corpse of one of her dead escorts. She tells us that she is here investigating an old Imperial ruin, and she read that the Imperials abandoned the site years ago mid-construction due to a discovery. And as we fight through the dungeon and assist Thoraya, we soon discover that the Imperials abandoned the site because they discovered an Aelid city was built underground, which is thus named Malatar, which we crash into following this portion of ad fights. Once we discover one half of the fabled Wrathstone that we're seeing here inside the ruins, we attempt to take it, and the Aelid residents get angry, and they attempt to kill us. So that's pretty interesting. And then through our efforts, Thoraya discovers that her tunnel gem contains the soul of her dead husband, who now embodies himself as a hostile ghost and tries to kill her in a fight later on in the dungeon, which I'll show you. And we actually have to protect her in that fight and escort her further in, and find that this Aelid city worshipped the Daedric goddess Meridia. This is why the Auroran soldiers from the realm of the colored rooms tries to stop us. And we end up obviously defeating the Symphony of Blades, who's the Aelid construct blessed with the power of Meridia, and obtain the first half of the Wrathstone, upon which Thoraya examines the stone, notice it has a Khajiit text, and tells us she needs more time to study it, and we'll part ways for now. And we come together again in the second dungeon as part of this DLC. So it's pretty interesting, pretty cool little lore in the first half of this DLC. So let's bang on and we'll get to the next boss. Alright, so here we go. We're on to the second boss of the dungeon, the Weeping Woman. Again, this is not too difficult of a fight. Basically, the Weeping Woman does a lot of AoEs that we need to avoid, and we're seeing these enemies that are frozen throughout the outer rings of the dungeon, or this boss fight, I should say, and periodically they will come to form and enter the fight as an ad. And so here's one of her AoEs. She generates a very large AoE underneath her feet, and you can't stand that. Even if you're the tank, you have to get out of that. That will kill everybody, including the tank. So get out of that AoE. And then another AoE she'll do is a very large circle in which you need to stand on the inner or the outer portion of it, but we like to go in the middle. It's easier to get everybody in there and maintain DPS on the boss. And then the Stone Watchers are going to spawn periodically through the fight, and they're not particularly dangerous, and we like to just let our AoEs kind of kill them as we're taking down the boss, but they do have a heavy attack that can certainly take you out if you're not paying attention. So if the tank doesn't grab aggro and you see that heavy attack on you, make sure you roll dodge that. And the third AoE that you saw she did was a very large circle, almost on the edge of the map. Again, you don't really need to worry too much about that. The ones where the inner portion is not damaging is good, but the ones where it's a solid, like this one, and that's a very large area, and you cannot stand in that. You really need to get to the edge of the map, or that's going to cause you a lot of damage. Another attack is the same as the previous boss. You have the circle that once it reaches its maximum area of radius, it's going to pop up with that poisonous fountain. Again, it's pretty easy to avoid, and it doesn't really cause that much damage even if you do get hit by it. The Frost Atronachs, don't focus too much on them. The Stone Watchers, don't focus too much on them. Let your AoEs take care of them as you're whittling the Weeping Woman down and avoiding her AoEs, and you're not going to have too much trouble with this fight. So let's bang through the next set of ads, and we'll meet you at the next boss. Alright, so here we go, rolling up on the third boss of the dungeon, the Dark Orb, which again isn't too bad if you kind of understand what's going on. And there's not too many mechanics about this boss, okay? What's basically going to happen is the Dark Orb is going to spawn in these Radiant Auroran monsters that basically you need to kill, and they're going to be there kind of attacking you, and they can actually do a Dawnbreaker on you, which is pretty strong. But what's going to happen is the orb is going to empower them with different powers throughout the fight, and that's going to be based on the orbs that spawn. So here we go, here's the first orb, and this is a Radiant Orb, and the Radiant Orb is going to basically give the Auroran monsters the Jesus Beam, which can certainly cause a lot of damage, but your tank should be able to hold on to the Radiant Auroran monsters to let you kind of just come in there and not really worry too much about their attacks. The second orb that the Dark Orb is going to spawn in is the Blazing Orb, and that's going to give the Radiant Auroran monsters the ability to cause flame attacks. Again, that's not going to cause you too much problems as long as your tank is holding on to the aggro of those Radiant Auroran monsters, no matter what ability they're imbued with. I will say though that whenever those orbs are up, these Auroran monsters gain sort of a shield. So you can see I'm not hitting too much damage on them right now, and they kind of gain a small shield. It seems they're not doing as much damage while these orbs are up. So here we go for the phosphorescent orb, and this orb is going to give them kind of an ice attack, which you see coming out of the ground there. Those are actually being cast by the phosphorescent Auroran monsters, and this is pretty cool. So by the time you're progressing through the fight, you're going to have several different types of Auroran monsters. You've got a blazing Auroran, a phosphorescent Auroran. Especially if your DPS isn't too high, then more and more Aurorans are going to be on the board. So you really want to be able to take out the orbs as fast as possible, and then come and do as much damage to whatever Aurorans are there, before the next orb is killed. Before the next orb comes up, which actually came up here. Wasn't really paying attention. It's just the purple orb that gives them the power of lightning. So the orb can't, this is interesting right here too, because the orb can be killed. Okay, so the other DPS decides to go ahead and finish off the orb, and that's going to stop Radiant Auroran monsters from spawning into the fight, because now the Dark Orb is gone. But keep in mind, that does not end the fight. If we were not able to kill all of the Radiant Auroran monsters, so here's the purple one, the Scintillating Orb, which gives them the lightning ability. But say for instance we wiped right now and we weren't able to kill all of the Auroran monsters, the entire fight would reset. These aren't considered adds, these are considered part of the fight. So even if you do kill the Dark Orb, which I do recommend doing, go ahead and finish off that Dark Orb in the last portion. You can execute it. That way Radiant monsters will stop coming into the fight, because as long as the Dark Orb is alive, that ball of darkness will continue to spawn in Auroran monsters. So it's actually a pretty cool fight. The mechanics are pretty fun, but again, it's not too difficult once you understand what exactly is happening. So let's get moving on. Alright, so we're on to the second to the last boss here, King Narilmor. And this is a pretty cool fight because, you know, he's almost a master illusionist. He creates several copies of himself. But what you can see is going to help you is by casting an ability such as Ellie Drain, any really visible debuff him, even Infallible Ether. If it's visible on him when he creates his clones, the debuff will remain on him so you can still tell which the main boss is, and you can continue to focus on that character. Now, we get a little disoriented later. The Ellie Drain stops and we can't find it. But see here, you can see that Ellie Drain is still on the one right in front of me now. So we know that that's the main boss, and we can continue to focus dealing damage to him and not even worry about the illusion forms. And the illusion forms all have different abilities, similar to what we saw in the Dark Orb fight. They have different abilities, and that's kind of a theme throughout this dungeon. You know, flame and ice, the lightning attacks. You know, they all have that. Kind of characteristic to their fights. So all those illusions are casting different abilities, but again, we're not really focusing on them. You can kill them if you need to, but you don't really need to as long as you keep a visible debuff on King Narilmor himself. Another part of this fight that is really important is that your female character, Thariah, is in this fight with you, and as I was talking about when we were talking about the lore, now she is fighting her husband, right, who is in this ghost form, and he actually periodically will try to kill her, and if you do not heal her, he will actually win and, you know, take her down. I guess in the essence of the story, not necessarily kill her, but knock her down per se. And when that happens, a large shield is going to be on the illusion forms and the boss himself, and that can be very, very hard to penetrate. So here we got a little disoriented. I can see the debuff right behind me, but I'm not really paying attention. We lost our tank. We get a little bit disoriented, but we recover. But essentially, as long as you keep a visible debuff on him, you can just focus all your attention on the main boss and take him down. So here we know that the main boss is right there. We're not going to focus too much on the copies of him, and we'll just kind of let them do their thing. Let our healer heal us through the damage that they're doing. And also, again, the healer has to maintain keeping Thara alive in her periodic battles with her ghost form husband. You do not want her to lose that fight, because if she does, it's going to make this fight very, very difficult for you by putting shields on all of the enemies. So just keep that in mind. You really want to keep her healed throughout this fight, and you'll get the Soulmates achievement if you don't allow her to be downed by her husband for the duration of the fight. So that's pretty cool. So not too hard of a fight. It can be a little bit difficult, but again, that tip of putting a visible debuff is really, really going to help you. So let's bank forward to the final boss. Alright, so here we go. We're on to the final boss, which is the Symphony of Blades. I'm going to give you a few tips to help you out through this fight. First off, for the healer, the Troll King set is really going to help because he does a unblockable debuff that is going to basically debuff all heals for all players for about 5 seconds. And the Troll King set basically has the ability of, healing players under 50% by giving them a huge boost to their health recovery, and healing debuffs don't affect healing recovery. So that's a really good monster set for your healer to run. An attack right there you just saw is an AoE that will randomly generate around a player. It's unblockable, and that will stun you once it reaches its maximum capacity, which is okay, not a big problem. Just break free of that and you don't really have to worry too much. He will also generate these Aurorans, the same Aurorans that we fought in the Dark Orb fight: a blazing Auroran, a phosphorescent Auroran, a scintillating Auroran, Auroran and a Radiant Auroran. You really want to focus on the Scintillating Auroran, which we missed, and the Blazing Auroran, because basically the ones that he touches are going to imbue him with those abilities. So now he has the ability from the Scintillating Auroran, which is the lightning, which killed me right there, which we find the lightning and the flame to be the most dangerous. So essentially focus on killing the red and the purple Auroran before they get to him. The Radiant one and the phosphorescent one's not really going to cause you too much problems. Really, you can avoid all the attacks that they give him when they run into him, if need be. But if you're going to focus on ones to take down, because you really don't have enough time to take all of them down, I think it's probably possible, but it'd be difficult to do. But focus on the red and focus on the purple. And then also he's going to spawn these Aurorans, which basically are similar to the walls in Fanglair. If you run into that wall that's right behind them, that's an instant death. And what the DPS need to do is take out one of them, and then it's going to create a gap in that wall that you can run through. We always liked, for ease sake, to just pick the middle one. That way we didn't have to talk about it. It was always the middle one, and we were going to go through that one every single time. We didn't have to say, oh, let's do the far left or second from the left. We just, whichever one was in the middle, that's the one we did. We killed it as quickly as we could, and we moved forward. Another attack he'll do, basically he will bring his blades around you. When he swings his blades, obviously that's a little AoE attack. Just dodge roll that. You don't really need to worry too much about that. Also, hold the boss as the tank. Make sure you're holding him in the middle of the map. That's going to give you the most time to, be able to create a hole in the wall no matter which direction that wall can come from. You don't want to get caught on one side and have very, very little amount of time to take out the wall before you can get into trouble. So keep that in mind. Um, Again, he will do that healing debuff. Okay, so you want to be aware of that. When you see you are becoming decrepit, that means that healing debuff is active. So keep that in mind. And basically, the elemental monsters that spawn in each corner, again, that's your main priority if you see them come in. Now, we missed it a second ago because we were focused on the wall, and that's when they spawned in, and he actually got all of the buffs from every Uran monster, which, as you can see, is avoidable. None of us died in that scenario, so it's okay if that happens. But again, if you want to minimize the trouble you're going to have, focus on the red and the purple so you don't have to worry about the meteors or the shock AoEs that he brings in from those attacks. The Radiant Oppression ability he gets from the Radiant Uran monsters, not too much to worry about, and the Ice Pillar isn't too much to worry about, although that will immobilize you. So you really want to avoid that, because if you get immobilized and then get hit by the wall, again, that is an instant death. Now, once you take him below 10%, aka execute, he's going to teleport to a second area, which is pretty cool. I really like this area. The look of it's pretty cool looking. But again, no matter what, he has all 4 of the Auroran abilities. No matter if any of them touched him before you get here or not, once you enter this realm, he's going to have all 4 of those mechanics. And again, those ghost walls are appearing, but what's different about this is that you don't actually have to create holes in them. There's always going to be a gap, and you can kind of weave in and around these walls as opposed to taking them out. So just kind of weave around the walls, stay away from him, roll dodge all of his Auroran abilities, and just focus on executing him down at this phase, and you should be able to get through it. So pretty cool fight, pretty cool dungeon, pretty cool lore to this dungeon, and overall as a DLC, I don't think it's too difficult. I don't think you're going to have too much difficulty getting through the veteran version. Obviously, we will get the hard mode up, which I'm sure is going to be much more difficult. But we'll get the hard mode up soon. The dungeon just came out today, but we definitely had a lot of fun running it. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the things you're going to get from when you beat this dungeon. A little different than the previous DLCs is you're automatically going to get the skin just for beating on veteran. You don't have to do hard mode, and you don't have to do the speed run or the no death, which I think is a little easy. But once you beat it on veteran, you'll get the skin, which is the Meridian Purified skin, which I can see equipped here. Kind of gives my eyes these orange glow, which is pretty cool with my black and orange Emperor set. I think the color is actually pretty cool, and it also adds a little bit of orange kind of glow to your arms and legs, which I'll show you here. You can see it on TheMasterJL, who's the guy that brings us all the lore. So that's pretty cool. Nice little skin, pretty easy to get in comparison to the other ones. The monster set that's going to come out of here is the Symphony of Blades set, which is an excellent healing set. You're going to get 2% additional healing done, and also when you heal an ally under 50% of their primary resource, you grant them Meridia's Favor, restoring 2200 magical or stamina every 1 second for 6 seconds. So that's really great. That's a really great monster set. I foresee a lot of healers starting to use that set coming up. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you liked the guide. If you did, feel free to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.